The seminar comes at a very opportune time. We have just finished the EU-Korea Summit, and for me an honour, as it was the first one I participated in, but I witnessed a very rich discussion between President Park and our two presidents, Van Rompuy and Barroso. To be honest, I've not seen as positive a relationship between the EU and a third country since I was working with the candidate countries leaving Central Europe to become member states of the EU. This was an extraordinarily rich and flourishing relationship. Our intention in this first session is to present some of the highlights of our EU-Korea alliance, as well as to look at some of the challenges facing the region, especially in terms of regional cooperation, which in our world, and I think in everybody's world, is going to be obviously a key to maintaining stability and continued peace and prosperity. These themes will then be developed in the three sessions later today on trade, security and regional cooperation. We've reached our 50th anniversary. Personally, I have aspirations to do so in my marriage, but I'll be quite remarkable if I do make it that far. I noticed that as our leaders sat together, they did look back in the rearview mirror at the progress and very happily made substantial progress, but they spent their time also looking very much forward, mapping out the next 50 years of that relationship. And we have two very distinguished speakers to provoke and to expand on that, setting out some of the themes that we'll later discuss. His Excellency Shigeo Iwatani, Secretary General of the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat between Korea, China and Japan. It's an honour to have you present here today. His Excellency also Gerhard Sabathil, Director for East Asia and Pacific in the European External Action Service. An honour to have you here, Gerhard, as well. With those, I think I would hand over. I understand, Your Excellency, Secretary General, you would make your first intervention. At a time when regional relations, especially between the three countries that Secretary General and his organisation work on, are so important, His Excellency in his work at the Secretariat to promote relations and cooperation between the three brings a unique perspective to our discussion this morning. His Excellency Iwatani is a seasoned and experienced Japanese diplomat in, I believe, 40 years of work. As a diplomat, His Excellency has served as ambassador to Austria, to Kenya, been advisor to a past Japanese Prime Minister, and has worked on developing relations with close neighbours in the Asian region, making him a natural candidate to head the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, as well as to deliver his thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the EU-Korea Institute for graciously inviting me to deliver a speech on this occasion. Today, I am here as Secretary General of the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat among the Republic of Korea, Japan, and China, the first and unique intergovernmental organization among the three countries. Currently, many commentaries say that Northeast Asia is trapped in an organizational gap. In this sense, I am proud that the build-up of our office would be a meaningful attempt to fill in such gap. Today, I would like to introduce the recent progress of the ROK Japan-China Trilateral Cooperation and share some of my thoughts for future cooperation between the European Union and the Northeast Asian countries. 2013 is not a calm year for Northeast Asia. This year, the territorial disputes among ROK, Japan and China heated up again. Bilateral difficulties seem to have attracted much more public attention than the aspects of the three countries' cooperative relations. However, as Secretary General of the TCS, the frontline implementer of the trilateral cooperation, I would like to convey a positive message that disputes or conflicts are never the mainstream of the three countries' relations. The three countries share geographical proximity, great economic common interests, and substantially close social, cultural, and people-to-people bonds, based on which the trilateral cooperation does have its resilience to transcend bilateral disputes. The trilateral cooperation among ROK, Japan, and China started in 1999 with the first trilateral summit held on the sideline of the ASEAN Plus 3 summit in the form of a breakfast meeting. Upon this humble beginning, it has now developed into a comprehensive and in-depth cooperative system that covers 18 ministerial meetings and over 100 cooperative projects on the central government level. Furthermore, the trilateral cooperation has been institutionalized. The trilateral summit, convened solely for the purpose of this meeting among themselves, came into being in 2008 and has been held annually since then. The third trilateral summit in 2010 adopted the Trilateral Cooperation Vision 2020, a forward-looking action plan for the coming decade. As a milestone, our secretariat was launched in Seoul in 2011 to further institutionalize and facilitate such efforts. Our mandate not only covers the administrative support to the three countries' cooperative mechanisms as a secretariat, but also roles of cooperative project facilitator and research organizer for figuring out future paths of the trilateral cooperation in various fields. Currently, new initiatives such as establishing a trilateral cooperation fund, organizing trilateral cooperation vision group, and establishing trilateral cooperation research centers are all being discussed among the three countries. To look back on the EU's history, people commonly say that the integration of Europe started from the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, and the European Economic Community, EEC, in 1950s. In this sense, I believe our secretariat, although in a small scale for the moment, is now following the footsteps of the European Union as a meaningful experiment by which we are attempting to deliver a convincing message that the three countries could co-live and cooperate in a peaceful and harmonious manner. Distinguished guests, Europe and Northeast Asia are both the cradles of ancient civilizations in the long history of the world. The ancient Silk Road, which started from the far eastern Korean peninsula and extended to the European continent, spearheaded the progress of our civilizations through exchanges and cooperation. Today, the EU and Northeast Asia have respectively developed into the world #1 and #3 economic bloc in terms of GDP index and trade volume, laying down a solid material foundation for the two regions to boost cooperation. Following the irresistible trend of the globalization, the reconnection of Europe and Northeast Asia tie was not simply an ideal and a dream, but a viable goal to achieve. First of all, a possible establishment of pan-European transportation logistics and connection of energy infrastructures such as gas oil pipelines will help remove stumbling blocks. It could serve as a catalyst in strengthening the connectivity between Europe and Northeast Asia and substantially bring tangible benefits to the enterprises and common people of both regions. Secondly, trade barriers need to be gradually dismantled both in between Northeast Asia and the European Union, as well as within Northeast Asian region internally. The ROK-EU FTA has taken effect since 2011. In the meantime, Japan-EU FTA negotiations has been started since this year. It is also my pleasure to inform you that the FTA negotiation among the ROK, Japan and China is almost also ongoing since the beginning of this year. Exactly today, the third round of the trilateral FTA negotiation is convened in Japan. Through these ongoing efforts, I sincerely wish that a single market could be created within the East Asian region, notably among the three big economic powers, ROK, Japan and China, at the early stage. I believe the vision of a highly liberated and unified market in Northeast Asia would be in line with the interest of the European countries. Distinguished guests, approximately 150 years ago, concepts and values such as sovereignty, nation-states, and international law spread from Europe to Northeast Asian countries, which fundamentally expedited the process of westernization and globalization in ROK, China and Japan, respectively. Today, we are witnessing weakening national consciousness and dilution of national boundaries in Europe. The perception of one Europe is increasingly rooted in European people's mind. Northeast Asia has not reached that stage yet. It is still a region with most faithful believers of values such as territorial integrity and sovereignty. Values that European countries are step by step seeding in the integration process still dominate in Northeast Asia. In this perspective, exploration of areas of mutual benefits and common interest between the EU and Northeast Asian countries should not stop at the material level. Despite being regarded as two economically dynamic regions in the world, the two regions stay in completely different development stages of integration process. The spiritual legacy of Europe, its successful experiences and lessons of regional integration, is a priceless guiding light for Northeast Asia and other parts of the world as well. It is a worldwide common sense that the developed countries should take the international duties in helping developing countries by sharing of technology and supporting of capitals. By the same token, I also humbly expect that regions with fruitful intra-regional cooperation practices also shoulder more responsibilities in teaching and assisting regions that are less integrated or even suffering from internal conflicts. Relationship between Europe and Northeast Asia is one of such cases. After all, as I stated earlier, the regional integration in Northeast Asia is beneficial not only for the region itself, but also for the rest of the world, including the European Union. In this perspective, it is quite timely and appropriate that the EU-Korea Policy Forum is taking up the issues related to the regional integration between EU and Northeast Asian countries as a whole in the third session this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, before taking the position in the Trilateral Cooperation Secretariat, I served as Ambassador of Japan in Austria from 2010 to 2013. I had the precious opportunity of watching how much the EU suffered from the successive financial crises, but every time successfully overcame the difficulty through close cooperation and dialogues, particularly among the top leaders. The eventual goal of our Secretariat is to establish similar relationship among the top leaders of the three countries. As the international body directly involved in the process of Northeast Asian regional cooperation, I would like to express the willingness that our Secretariat and various EU functional bodies further regularize working relation and strengthen the partnership in the future. Lastly, I am looking forward to lively discussion among the distinguished participants so that this forum will generate fresh ideas as to how to pave ways toward not only a Korea-EU partnership, but also a close tie between Northeast Asia as a whole and the European Union. Thank you very much for your time.
Your Excellency, many thanks for your broad and very illustrative words. We look forward to coming back and opening up some of the issues that you've raised in the discussion. Before doing so, though, perhaps I could turn to Your Excellency Gerhard Sabathil to give his remarks. Gerhard served as our ambassador twice in Norway and in Iceland, as well as working on the Western Balkans, building up regional cooperation in view of those countries' aspiration to join the EU. He brings, over the 30 years of that long experience, to steer and coordinate now our relations with some of the EU's most precious and high-profile allies, including Korea, China and Japan. Interestingly, he's also my boss. But we look forward to your opening remarks as well. Please go.
Thanks, Julian. Ambassador, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Both Ambassador Iwatani and myself are here today to speak about the ways and means to reach security and prosperity in East Asia and in the relation of the EU with its Asian partners, in particular Korea. But I'm very grateful that you have widened our view to Northeast Asia as a whole. And as Julian has pointed out rightly, we had our summit with Korea. We had also last week our summits with Japan and China. And all these summits having been successful, very successful, but there is one small point of regret, I must say. The regret is that obviously the EU can speak with each of these countries easier than the three countries speak together between themselves. And this is the core of our concern as well, because stability, security, cooperation is what we have in mind when we speak about our relationship with Northeast Asia. And we are basing this on our own historical perspective, that cooperation should be seen as a tool to create the conditions for security and prosperity. We have experienced security cooperation in Europe with different formula. The Council of Europe, the oldest setup, the EEC, now the EU, OSCE, NATO. Cooperation can reap immediate and visible benefits, and good experience in easy matters can tempt leaders to try on more difficult issues. This is, I believe, the sense of President Park's trust politic, and we see her very much, therefore, in the best tradition of our own Helsinki process 40 years ago. European nations' history may differ to the one of the Asian nations. We both have very rich cultures, but different ways to reach enlightenment, renaissance and harmony. Sometimes painfully after genocides and wars. The EU project, in fact, came out of this period. We have seen in Europe economic cooperation well before the Coal and Steel Union and the EU. We had several customs unions and even monetary unions between some European nations already centuries ago. Economists have told us that cooperation is a tool to reduce the costs of transactions, but it must be supported by domestic measures and by trade agreements. which will foster bilateral or regional cooperation. What we learned over the last centuries is that peace, security and prosperity are mutually reinforcing each other. Our institutions and policies were designed first to foster economic and industrial cooperation rather than to reduce the sovereignty of member states, this being only in a very final stage. Therefore, our preferred designs and processes are based on coexistence first, dialogues, cooperation, and finally integration. Its strategic partnership with Korea, China and Japan include these mechanisms because we seek to achieve mutual benefits in this cooperation. Clearly, the 7th summit between the EU and the Republic of Korea 2 weeks ago illustrated that our bilateral dialogues and cooperation are beneficial. Your discussions today will probably take these elements into account and show us their limitations and possible areas where we can do even better. Speaking about prosperity, Europe and Korea are betting on the creative economy and sustainable growth. My colleagues from the European Commission will share their views on why reinforced cooperation on higher education and research or dialogue on industrial development will increase our mutual benefits. On security, EU and Korea are not only concerned but would like to see a peaceful change in the Korean Peninsula. I was visited yesterday by members of the Communist Party of DPRK. I could realize how long the way is still to achieve this objective. But we have, between EU and the Republic of Korea, developed a substantial high-level political dialogue with regular consultations on regional security issues, on unification as such, and on the situation in our neighborhood. We both looked at ways in which we can assist democratic transitions also in our regions, in the Middle East, in North Africa. Already we are on the same political lines regarding most issues. We look forward to Korea continuing its support for refugees coming from Syria, and there might be scope for us to work together more closely on revitalizing the economy in some countries, such as Egypt and in the Palestinian territories. The military drawdown in Afghanistan will be a pivotal moment on that country's destiny. It will be important for the international community to continue supporting the Afghan authorities beyond 2014. I hope that Korea can consider becoming a supporter of the Heart of Asia meetings. And our respective mission in Kabul will meet to look at possible cooperation in police training and in the run-up to the 2014 elections. Again, President Park trusts politique vis-à-vis the DPRK received the full support of the EU during the last summit. And we can see a new phase of engagement unfolding with the relative success of recent inter-Korea talks. Basically, we clearly share the same objective. First, to denuclearize the DPRK. Second, improve the humanitarian situation. And third, to see the end of the violations of human rights in the DPRK. We are ready to engage DPRK in a critical dialogue and help its people and reforms as the EU is willing and has the capacity to make a contribution in addressing the nuclear crisis there and encouraging the country to join the international community and cooling down tensions in Northeast Asia and reviving regional cooperation. The EU maintains its policy of critical engagement with the DPRK, which has many similarities with the trust-building process of President Park. On the one hand, we have implemented sanctions and issued critical statements following provocations. On the other hand, we have kept dialogue channels open. North Korean diplomats and officials are received in our capitals, and visits are taking place to Pyongyang, most recently also by the European Parliament. Also, the food security projects continue to be implemented, because we wish to utilize all instruments available to persuade the DPRK to move in the right direction, and we're looking at ways in which we can continue our efforts in this regard. Therefore, it was particularly meaningful. Ambassador has attended to see this tete-a-tete between the presidents, mainly focusing on the situation on the Korean Peninsula. The EU and the Republic of Korea are also aligned on global issues. Warsaw is the last step in this matter, and a lot of work has still to be done on this. But also on human rights, Middle East as mentioned, non-proliferation and disarmament. Yesterday we discussed cyber security, and also in development cooperation we work more closely together. Our trust in effective multilateral dialogue and action paved the way for Korea cooperation with EU crisis management operations, and a framework participation agreement to facilitate Korea's future possible contributions will be signed early in 2014. Speaking finally about the virtues of regional integration, I see that the benefits of our respective trade policies, with a web of FTAs as a linchpin of regional cooperation and integration. Bilaterally, our FTA has made Korea and the EU more interdependent and encouraging both sides to cooperate, to diversify their open economies, and encourage innovation and creativity. President Park also invited the EU to share its experience on regional integration, as she sees the EU as a model for the Northeast Asia Peace and Prosperity Initiative. There will be a Korea-EU joint seminar in 2014 to find ways to facilitate regional cooperation in Northeast Asia. Looking behind, we can see that 50 years of EU-Korea diplomatic relations have benefited from the expansion of the EU and the Han River miracle in Korea. Now that President Park promised in her inaugural speech to make the Korean people happy with the second miracle of the River Han, I think that all of us understand and share such a Korean dream. Thank you very much.